Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We have a special episode today because Alan Vo and Jonathan Ballard with LeafyPack are here live in the studio. Thank you very much for joining me, guys.
Pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Oh, man, you flew in. It's amazing.
It's cold.
It is cold. It's cold. It's like when people say they're going to visit, I'm like, in December, huh? Sorry. But it's Wisconsin December.
Being from Montana, I feel right at home.
Good.
Both the people and the weather. So
It's actually like weirdly mild right now. So
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't think I brought enough jackets.
yeah, I understand that.
I should have brought a thermal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we should have like CEN branded like heat pads or something for somebody.
Gloves.
Gloves,
Yeah,
yeah.
we put the gloves on that.
Yeah, luckily the studio's a hot box.
Yeah.
But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at David@Cannabis Equipment News with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our, what's a daily newsletter now? Our daily newsletter, make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Alan, I'd like to start with you just because your journey to cannabis is so interesting.
Yep.
How did you find yourself in cannabis? And it came via Hollywood, right?
Yes, actually. So I started my journey in Hollywood as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
From an actor there, started back in 2011. Started as an actor, didn't do so well. Then kind of switched behind the cameras. Started writing my own stuff, wrote a lot of things, was pitching it. No one ever picked up my products or my scripts, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Just calling agents and nothing ever happened. I decided, hey, I had to eventually produce my own film.
Yeah.
And so I had a good team of producers and writing partners and directors that were working with me. Directed my first film, guerrilla style film. We shot with just Canon T3Is. If we were lucky, we can get a 5D Mark II. This is right before the Mark III. Rented nice lenses because that was like the whole thing in I guess in filmmaking at the time. And I think our Bible was DSLR film school. And then we watched a lot of that stuff. And from there, I kind of journeyed around. I just decided producing was a better fit for me. My first feature I did was with Max Borenstein. He wrote Godzilla. He actually wrote all of them. King Kong. He did all that stuff. So I produced a film called Ascension with him. And then from there, we started doing a lot of other short films. I did a film called Cherry Blossom Bloom with my two really good friends. A boxing movie about these two boxers from Japan and America during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Really artistic film, very much a Terrence Malick kind of a film. And then at the same time, I had to survive. So I was already in the lighting industry, selling commercial lights, warehouse lighting, things like that. And then I was like, okay, the cannabis industry is kind of growing.
Mm-hmm.
Our LEDs are already in buildings. Can they grow? Mm-hmm. Like, what are the lights? And so started working with manufacturers for that stuff. And then eventually I got into grow lighting. And then I just, at that point, I was just calling everybody, calling farmers, growers to see if they want to test out lights.
Mm-hmm. We
had a company called Cyrus Lighting.
Okay.
And we were just really pitching and pushing these lights, these LED grow lights with these far reds and reds. We're getting Osram chips. I think at the time, we're basically a one-to-one to Fluence.
Mm-hmm.
And then around 2018, I went to my first MJ BizCon.
Okay.
Kind of walked around, didn't really know what I was getting into. Following year in 2019 got bigger. Then I guess I realized at the time in 2019 was when you'd have to spend 2 days at these shows.
Yeah.
And then I met a really good friend of mine who's my co-founder now, Mark Evangelista. He was already in the packaging industry. He at the time he was getting ready to start Planet Packaging, which focuses on food.
Mm-hmm.
He brought me into the company and kind of taught me everything I knew about packaging. He wanted me to focus on packaging, bags, jars, things like that, because it's a new industry. I guess it was the green rush at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he brought me into that, which did a lot better for us with my connections than grow lights. Grow lights was just never there. I never had the backing of Fluence and things like that.
Yeah. So from your filmmaking career,
Yep.
Is there one in particular project that is just like you hold closest to your heart?
I think Ascension. It's my first.
Okay.
It's on. I believe it's on Amazon now. You can rent it on Amazon.
Okay.
It's a micro budget film. It's basically about this girl who gets impregnated by an alien.
Oh, right. I'm already in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm already in.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi thriller, but it's more of a thriller than it is a horror film.
Okay.
And then she's just trying to find out what's in her body. And her family, it's also kind of like a family drama at the same time.
Okay.
So I think right now it's doing pretty well on those platforms.
Nice.
But that's been my baby. Yeah.
So is there anything that you learned from your filmmaking career that, has actually helped you set you up for success in cannabis?
Absolutely. I think our biggest was working on budgets and timeline, right?
Okay.
So our biggest thing is in film, if you are late, if you don't make your days, it's money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so working with a big crew, we had about 45 to 55 person crew. So managing the entire crew, you have your lighting guys, you have your camera guys, you have your actors, you have also their managers and agents. And then we had a little girl on camera. So you had to deal with her parents.
Oh, yeah.
We had animals on set. So you had to deal with the wranglers.
Yeah.
So you're managing those things at the same time. You have bullets flying left and right.
Yeah.
So managing a team was what I learned. Managing egos is what I learned. And staying on time. I think we were late one day.
Yeah.
Which most films are late all the time. On a 20-day shoot for one day being late wasn't bad. And it was obviously day one. From there, we kind of hit our stride and then we kind of moved along.
Okay.
So that's what I kind of learned, I guess, to set me up for success was understanding how to work with people and budgets.
When did you start LeafyPack?
We started in late 2019.
Okay.
Like right before the pandemic. I think my first trip out, I was actually in Illinois for a visit. And then got to the airport and my mom goes, hey, you should take a look at the news. I think you need to go home.
Yeah.
And I was in South Bend because I drove all the way out there to Indiana as well. And then I realized that I don't think I can get home. She's like, go home now.
Yeah.
Got the first flight home. I think 2 days later it was lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was brutal. And it was also winter. So that wasn't fun.
Oh, man. No, it's great that you got home. Like, there were so many people that were all of a sudden stranded.
Yeah. Yeah. There's people, and I think at the time I had masks already.
Oh, okay.
So I remember this girl next to me, she was coughing. So I was like, here's a mask. You know? And that was like the norm, right?
Yeah.
So now we looked like the weird people with the mask next to each other, but no one else did. And everyone else was coughing. And
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely early on I went with the bandana. I had a really banging like strawberry shortcake bandana.
Yeah.
And just in hindsight, I'm like, oh no. Like we went and I was at a hackerspace.
Yeah.
And the guy comes out with this like huge industrial like paint mask, and he's like, and he had a full beard that he had shaved. He's like, no, this is the only safe way to do it. And so I just like take the bandana off. I'm like. He's like, yeah, that's not doing it.
you didn't double mask it to cover your beard? And
No. It was like I knew that what I was doing was imperfect, but I was adjusting to the new normal.
It's an interesting time for everybody, I think.
Yeah. So was it during that time that you came to LeafyPack?
No.
More interesting.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
no,
Interesting
I don't quite have the interesting story that Alan has, but like many people, I was kind of thrust into the cannabis industry unbeknownst to oneself. So, the shortest version of this would be my cousin founded a finance company very early in the hemp days.
Okay.
He wanted to make hemp fiber. For companies like Patagonia. There was a big push back in 2014, 2015, even a little before that, to start incorporating hemp fiber into clothing. I said, hey, that's great, man. You do you.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I think late 2015 that he kind of gave up, because he goes, there's absolutely no way for me to get financing. And to think you couldn't get hemp financing today is pretty wild.
Yeah.
And so he instead raised capital to get a debt facility to finance other companies who wanted to look into, hemp decortication systems. There's a couple companies out of Australia doing that. That was a wild time. And they were doing these decortication systems to make hemp particle board, hemp fibers. And then that led into the extraction world that we knew from about 2017 to 2019 when MJ BizCon looked like a brewery convention for a while there.
Lots of steel everywhere.
Yeah, everyone had their own extraction systems. And so he asked me to come in. I came from a completely different corporate background, and asked me to just kind of assess his little office space down in Denver, Colorado, and kind of figure out, hey, how can we improve?
Yeah.
So I came in on a day off. I took a day off and came in to help a family member out, and kind of walked around and gave him my feedback.
You're like, just close the doors now.
No, I did give him some advice, and he was being the smart guy he is. He apparently saw something in me and thought that'd be an asset to his finance team. He founded Sweet Leaf Capital, which is now Sweet Leaf Madison Capital, the largest debt lender in the industry and one of the very first that's ever been. And they're still running strong in the commercial real estate side, primarily at this point. But throughout those years, I attended every MJ BizCon, talking to so many manufacturers, equipment manufacturers, from everything from triple quad systems for testing, which was very interesting during the pandemic. You'd be surprised how many of those centers were also testing for COVID. Mm-hmm. And also the extraction, everything from high production ethanol extraction facilities to hydrocarbon, solventless later down the line. We were also doing processing, lighting systems, fluents, FOS, all of those. And in that mix, to round this whole thing out throughout those many years, I could not find an automation company that I felt I could rely on. Mm-hmm. When you're financing equipment, especially in those early days when a lot of people are, the technician might be their son.
Yeah.
They've got maybe one or two systems in the field because it was a new space. A lot of my time was spent not just visiting customers or underwriting customers or clients, but actually looking into the manufacturers themselves. How many units do they have in the field? What customers do today to confirm and gain confidence in their equipment manufacturing partners, I was doing in the finance space. Because if I send somebody $1 million, I would hope that they deliver a piece of equipment, and that is not always the case.
Yeah.
And so LeafyPack, after going through a number of manufacturers, and there's a lot of great automation companies out there, we know a lot of them on a first name basis. I landed on LeafyPack, and I think I financed maybe the first one or two systems that LeafyPack had out in the field. So I was an early adopter of LeafyPack.
Okay.
It's like the album that you find where you're like, wow, this is really cool. And then you hear it on the radio and you're like, wait a minute. I knew this before it was cool.
Oh, that's right. I mean, that's how music is now, right?
Yeah.
Where like everyone keeps it to themselves.
Yeah.
And then when somebody else hears about it, it's like, no, I knew it like 6 months ago, man.
Yeah.
Like,
And so I joined LeafyPack about 1.5 years ago. I really found automation exciting. I come from Montana. My grandfather was really into automation systems out on our wheat farm. Mm-hmm. Wheat, not weed. Wheat farm.
Yeah.
All the way back to the old Armatron days from Radio Shack. And when I was kind of looking after the pandemic for something to do instead of debt financing, Alan and Mark and the team, they reached out to me, and we had such a good rapport for such a long time that I wanted to work for a young, energetic group. And as a financier, I had already seen that automation does three things really well. It lowers costs. It also increases throughput and consistency. I'm going to bundle those together. And then at the last piece of that is it controls margin, because we are in a industry where, and I've seen this happen, it's like Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray. The prices are through the roof. You're sitting there looking at, this mass cash inflow because you're the first to the market, and inevitably others are going to enter the market, follow suit. The price is going to fall. And by the time it's in that free fall state, if you haven't considered controlling those margins however possible, and automation is one of the best ways to do that, you're already behind. And so building automation, even if it's from a semi-automatic form to a fully automatic form, building that into your business plan in what is a volatile market is a requirement.
Yeah.
And so I jumped on board with these guys and haven't looked back ever since.
No, I've been constantly surprised by, in other industries, automation buy-in is just a no-brainer. But even at MJ Biz, where we saw each other like a week ago, I was talking to a guy and he's just like, hey, I can make 1 million pre-rolls in a desert location cheaper with a bunch of people. And I'm just like, but is that sustainable to you?
No.
Do you he's still like, I was just surprised how many people still haven't bought into automation.
I think for the industry as a whole, I think it's still a first time buy for these guys, right? So, and especially because you mentioned pre-rolls. Pre-rolls are really hard.
Yeah.
They're tough. Weighing them is hard. Getting the right consistency is hard. I mean, finding the right cone manufacturer is hard. But certain areas, there's just no work, right? So when you go into these areas where, hey, you put a sign that I'm hiring for this town we're doing pre-rolls. That I think that works for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And then from there on, people start getting sick and they just show up and they'll steal things. That's a big thing is stealing.
Yeah.
They'll make a pre-roll and pocket one or two.
Yeah.
So I think
the one for me, two for you
exactly,
sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, for cannabis companies that are just starting, I think automation is pretty scary.
Yeah.
But that's why we're here. We're trying to teach these guys that it's not, we're there for training. We're there for a long time. Customer support. We're probably, I would say, amongst the top companies when it comes to customer service. We're texting our guys all the time. I'm texting customers all the time. If they ever need anything, they call me, right?
Yeah.
So, I take a lot of pride in what I do. And customer service is kind of, where we kind of shine the most.
Okay.
Because if you call, you don't need to talk to 45 different people. Call me directly. Yeah, I'll get our technical director, Jesus Castro, on the phone with you. And we'll work together on this thing because it's a partnership. That's how we see it.
So how does LeafyPack stand among the pack of other automation companies? Just because you mentioned there are a lot of good automation competitors out there, but there's also a lot of dicey equipment out on the market, and when you talk about financing it, sometimes, people need to be careful as to what they're bringing in house.
There's a lot of boogeymen out there. And I think just to touch back on the original point, two things. Automation can be scary. There's a lot of moving parts. That comes from production lines. How does the product get to automation? What kind of automation are we talking about? Is it packaging? Is the automation in the production side? A lot of the cannabis industry, and we're seeing more and more people who are more affluent to large-scale commercial production lines getting involved in the industry. So it's becoming, the veil is being pulled back a little bit, shining some light on what was a little scary before is not the case now. I do think that we are stewards in this space where we need to educate people. I do feel like there is a difference between education and reprimanding people. We've all been educated by a teacher that we absolutely despise.
A lot of teachable moments.
Yeah, a lot of teachable moments. But I think taking your automation or equipment manufacturing hat off and putting on a consultative hat and walking them through what is automation to their business, not what is automation to us as an equipment manufacturer. We sometimes, and this comes from me not being, let's say, the equipment specialist, but I've seen a lot of it. I've financed a lot of it in my life. You can, trot before you gallop, and you got to look at, hey, what part of your business do you feel the tightest squeeze that we can help to alleviate that? And I think the word automation and throughput gets thrown around so much that we lose sight as equipment manufacturers of what actually matters to the customer. And to your second point of, hey, there's all these equipment manufacturers out there. What sets us apart? I think it's less the equipment. I mean, we make high quality equipment, and Alan can speak more to the technical builds of that. But one thing that I did when I was financing was creating an ecosystem while I was vetting these equipment manufacturers of a respectful, confident, and cooperative group of people that we felt comfortable partnering with. Not lowercase p partnering, but working with equipment manufacturers, even if they're competitors in this space, to get the customer not what we think they need, but what the customer needs, and more importantly, what they want.
Yeah.
And that's where these partnerships really started coming together, even if it's a competitor, like we thought Green Vault System was for years. And then all of a sudden we sit back and go, hey, why am I trying to force somebody and feature vomit a multi-head weigher just because we manufacture it? The customers told me 3 or 4 times that that's just not what they want. Why am I fighting this so hard when the customer is literally telling me exactly what they want, and I'm just too scared to reach across the counter, make that connection with a quote unquote competitor, turn them into an advocate, and now we're creating that comfortable, confident, and respectful environment for people who are coming into this space every single year. Not many industries have that, where every year new states, not municipalities, but entire cultures of people are entering a market that never existed prior to that time. And so every year it is our responsibility to welcome them into a space that isn't full of toxic equipment manufacturers fighting over who's going to sell the best multi-head weigher or bagger in the space. And that's something I think that differentiates us and puts LeafyPack not ahead of anybody, but I think the value that we bring to the customers is that if they want to work with 2 or 3 manufacturing partners, we already have relationships built with them and know them on a first name basis. So the customer doesn't feel like they're tied between 2 awkward relationships. It's our responsibility to work together so the customer feels welcomed into the cannabis industry from the jump.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Alan, when did you decide that your equipment would play well with others instead of just being a closed system?
That's a good question. I think we kind of started seeing that when we first started, because people were always saying, well, what makes you different between Green Vault systems and, your way versus Green Vault systems? And, there's always, in the sales world, there's always a list of rebuttals of, we do this, we do that, we do this. Eventually it got tiring, and I was like, you know what? They do better things than us. You know what they do is they can separate buds better than us. If you want 4 nugs into a bag that's 3.5 grams, they can do that. We can't do that. And so it started becoming more of like, what you're looking for, call Green Vault, call Lisa at Green Vault. She'll take care of you. And then eventually it was more of like, we started seeing them at the shows. Then we started, having dinner with them, and then eventually it was more of like, we recommend so many people over to you guys. Like, why don't we start something? And John, doing what he does, he bridges that, right? And he's always been that way. And eventually we got into this great partnership with Green Vault, and they send us business, we send them business. We never compete with each other at this point anymore.
Well, so that was some of the big news that came out of MJ Biz was this partnership. Can you tell us a little bit about how it works, the partnership between you and Green Vault?
Well, it works, like I said, on trust, transparency, and confidence. No, how it works is their systems integrate with our systems. And what that means from a standpoint is over the last year, behind the scenes, we have put time, resources, energy, money on both sides, because relationships are built on a 2-way street. And we knew that what their system does is industry born. It is unlike anything else that anyone is doing in this space, right? They're using air to control and move the product and the flower throughout the weighing process. A big issue with people seeing the multi-head weighers, and some people think this more than others, but it's not up to us to decide. It's up to the customer. Vibration panels, losing terpenes. So for that real craft group that's looking to control how the bud looks when it goes into the jar, into the bag, whatever it might be, they're utilizing air cush technology. Being from Everett, Washington, they're right in Boeing's backyard. So they're using components from Boeing. Their steel is manufactured in the back street by Boeing outside of that area. And so they have this specific industry-born product. That then works perfectly with our system because R&R took the time to create auto-feeding systems, check weighers that then feed directly into what we call our roto bagger. So altogether, we're kind of calling this the precision batching and bagging solution. And so what this does is it'll bring the product through that air cush weighing technology into another precision check weigher for accuracy, and then dropping into our rotary style, fully servo driven roto bagger. We got speeds up to 25 per minute, which is a pretty substantial speed for any operator, but you're not having that abrasive touch to the product. And so this is not just, hey, we integrated this once, we sat down with them for almost a year in their facility. We actually have a really great video online of this where we were working day in and day out to make sure that this was a full turnkey end-to-end solution from product placement and determination all the way to a retail ready product. We had the whole line at MJ Biz this year. But again, these things don't happen overnight. This took a lot of work. So when you say, what does that entail? It entails a lot of hard work, sweat, and effort to make sure that it's not just a one-off throwaway solution to an equipment problem.
Yeah. The trust is there.
Yeah.
I know the guys over there at Green Vault, they were looking to partner with, a reliable bagging manufacturer for a long time. So, working with them was, I guess it was kind of like, for, I guess, Hollywood terms, it's like your SAG Awards, right? You're voted by your peers. Your peers kind of like accept you. And, that vote of confidence from them really kind of set us apart. And, we work together all the time now. We're speaking on a daily basis. We're sending people, we're sending drawings, we're coming up with different solutions. And I think there's some stuff in the future that we're working on that's really going to surprise the industry.
Yeah.
I really find it interesting that they're moving it with air, just because, especially when you're talking about like jarred flour or flour that's like visible to the consumer, that could make quite a difference in terms of like what's picked off the shelf.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
So, and I have to tell you at MJ Biz, because I want to get into some of the other machines that you had at your booth, but like, so the story behind how we ran into each other at MJ Biz, I just wanted to give you a little bit more context.
Sure.
Because I apologize. Like, I'm sure it seemed like I was just trying to be like, yes, we'll talk later. But so when we ran into each other by chance, because, that last day at the show, anyone that showed up like after 10 had to like check their luggage.
Yep.
So we were already headed to the airport. I had to go through the getting my luggage process.
Yeah.
Getting into the Uber, and I'm just like, oh, I forgot my laptop. And it is like getting tight. And because we were shooting video at the show, our producer had like a bunch of this equipment, all of it needed to be checked. And I'm like, I'll just run into the booth. And like, I went this like certain way past your booth, and I'm just like, I'm just going to sneak through all these. And then you're just like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but like I got a plane leaving in like 45 minutes. Yeah. So I just really want to apologize because
no apologies.
It was good to see all your equipment, however rushed it was.
Yeah.
But it was also like, so I went and got the laptop, got back. I could tell producer Eric was sweating. He's just like, he was not comfortable. He was just like, I don't like it, man. I don't like it. And then the Uber comes.
This all sounds like a normal Wednesday at MJ BizCon.
Yeah.
By the way.
Well, it was just like,
everyone's trying to beat that rush.
Well, and then I get like an Uber XL because I'm like, we need something with a little more room. There's 3 of us.
Yeah.
There is also our
Equipment.
other editor, Ben. And the guy, it's like he's never pulled into the convention center. Like he pulls in, he goes the wrong way, parks, we are almost at the car, like parks. And like, I'm just like, and I could tell Eric is just sweating. And like, we get in the Uber. It says we're going to get there at like 12:55 and our flight leaves at 1:45.
Oh, no.
Nice.
And it was just, it took, everything had to go right. But it was like the first time in a while I've had to sprint to a plane.
Yeah.
And like legitimately, I'm the like panting guy as I sit next to people like, sorry, this should calm down. Otherwise things will go bad.
It's just the holiday season. You're good. You look like everyone else, I'm sure.
No, so I do apologize, but I was glad that we got to meet. And one of the things I liked was your pre-roll machine.
Yes.
So if you could tell us a little bit more about how that works, I think that would be important for our audience.
So the pre-roll machine we've been working on, we launched the first Apollo in 2020. It was a volumetric dosing machine, no weighers. At the time, it was kind of what the industry needed. We've kind of built our name off of that. As we went, the technology started going more towards weighing because people want to know exactly 0.5 gram, 1 gram, 1/4 gram, dog walkers, whatever they want to do. They want to weigh it. And with volumetric dosing, it's accurate up to a certain point. You're not going to get that if you're doing 0.5 grams, you're not going to get 0.51 every time. Your variable range is within 10%, right? Which is acceptable. But, some manufacturers, some producers, they want something a little bit more precise. So we started developing our pre-roll machine with a weigher. It took a long time. We had to go through the drawing board, kind of scratch everything we did. The foundation of it is still rotary style, which we like, as you can see on our rotobagger.
Yeah.
And from there, we started adding, let's start adding in weighers, and how do we weigh it? How do we feed it? Things started getting complicating when you start looking around in the industry of seeing what other people were doing. And I always thought, we don't need to complicate people. We need to teach these things. If I can't teach these things to operators, how are they ever going to know?
Yeah.
So we just made something very simple. Vibratory hopper feeds into a weighing cup. The weighing cup then goes and drops into the cones. But what we did was that we added a knockbox kind of a style that we saw was working for the industry with Futurola. So you're knockboxing the very bottom to get that. At the same time, we added tamping rods go over the top. So when you're making a pre-roll now, if you and I are sitting here with a cone, when you fill it, you're going to tap it. You're going to take a chopstick or whatever it is to push it down. We added both those elements in there to get that compaction, that tightness, and it's customizable. So you can, certain strains, because no strains are the same. You can get certain strains tighter. You can get certain strains looser. It really comes down to what the operator wants to use. And so we made this compact system that's open, so people could actually run this thing with one person, and you could have a team that can weigh, fill, twist, crown, and eject out about 850 to 900 pre-rolls an hour.
Okay.
So small system, compact. We actually brought it to a mansion party a couple years ago.
Okay.
We plugged it into the wall.
Yeah.
We had an air compressor on the other side. And as people were coming in, we're making fresh pre-rolls and we're handing out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It was one thing I did notice was the compact footprints.
Yes.
What is it, like 4x4 footprints?
It's about 4x4x3.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But when you're working with some of these operators, they just don't have a lot of room in their facility.
And a lot of the spaces that people, due to zoning, is my time doing some commercial real estate, is due to zoning, you don't just get to pick exactly the building you want, exactly how you want it and built out. And then if you're talking about MSOs or even people who are just vertically integrated and expanding in a single state, oftentimes they're acquiring buildings from either, failed operations or operations that are just looking to sell and get out. Those things are just in every industry, but you don't always get to pick exactly what you want.
Yeah.
I do think that our pre-roll machine, and Alan mentioned Futurola, we know Harold over at Pre-Roller very, very well. Great guy, great team.
Guy. Yeah.
And I feel like what Alan and our technical team do is we try to find a space in the industry that is just kind of void. And the Apollo, when I first started financing them and then joined the team, a ton of them. The main thing was I felt like it went from knockbox all the way to a high production, not complicated, but a team or a machine that needed a team that was familiar with technology. And you can lead a horse to water, but at the end of the day, when you leave and you expect a team of people to run a complicated machine, like any pre-roll in the market, those SOPs are so important. I think Nick had mentioned that he has an 8-page for his WANA system. We have, maybe not 8 pages, but we have a substantial amount to help walk people through that. And that's our job as equipment suppliers to also supply the knowledge of, how the preparation of the product needs to be in order to operate into that machine effectively. And one thing we missed in the industry was kind of an entry-level, fully automatic device. That sounds like an oxymoron, but
no,
I feel
you're
like
right.
you pick
It's
up
like
what I'm saying.
Yeah, you kind of go from like manual or tabletop to like fully automated system, which it is. And they've tried making like ones for like small, medium-sized businesses, but really it's just a smaller version of the still big machine. So who is the ideal customer for the Apollo? Like what size operation?
I would say everybody. And it's funny you say that.
It's easy. Everyone.
It is for everyone because you have your guys who are starting now.
Yeah.
Knockboxes can only do so much. As great as they are, we still actually have customers who have a knockbox next to the Apollo.
Yeah.
But I think with startups, those are good for those guys. But then for MSOs, the thing about MSOs is that their entire business model is based upon buying smaller companies. And so when you're buying those, instead of spending $500,000 on a machine, you can grow into those things.
Yeah.
Right. And if you know one, you're going to know three. So, and then if you have 3 machines, well, guess what? You can run 3 different strains. If one machine goes down,
True.
you still have 2 other machines. You buy a big machine, one goes down, that entire machine's down for however long it needs to be serviced.
No, that's a good point.
So you can add these things along, and we try to keep it in that market that's this next to entry level. But again, we know that you can scale it.
Yeah.
Right? We're not going to do anything else outside of this. We like the compactness the way it is now.
Yeah.
And I think so your startups will work and your MSOs will work.
I think to that point, I saw this a lot in the testing facilities, is that there was required redundancies, right? So if there was in that world, it's a lot of, if there's a software update, as we've all felt when Microsoft randomly pushes an update 5 minutes before a meeting, you need to have something else that comes in. I would put a harder line down, in my opinion, again, that is, this belongs in a space where you were talking about mid-market, and even Alan talking about MSOs. When you look at that micro level, when they're buying these smaller businesses, they're still a smaller business underneath that larger banner.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing that people forget about when they're talking about the coveted MSO acronym is that they're generally created with multiple smaller businesses underneath it. A lot of these businesses don't speak to each other. The guy in Tallahassee might not know the gentleman up in Maine, right? Up in Portland, Maine. Like, they might not speak to each other. Well, oftentimes they are independent businesses operating under a brand. And we're seeing more and more standardization throughout those. And, some facilities, they might need something higher capacity. Another facility under the same brand, the same MSO brand, in a certain area just might not need that same capacity. So we can scale with it. So we can create those redundancies in the positive term, but also, we can also refer people to our friendly partners in the industry, because again, we don't need to compete every step of the way with everybody. There's enough working against us as it is being in cannabis, that if we feel like a customer has a specific need or volume they're trying to meet, that's where the partnerships start to come in.
Okay.
But as Alan said, we can service all of those depending on the business model and what they're looking to achieve.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the idea is like Apollo is going to stay the same size, and if they want to scale, they can add units.
They could add units.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're filling 2 at a time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you're going to get those outputs regardless of 1 or 2 machines. You're just adding on, and again, for us, we look at it as compactness. So we can have one in the studio here and one on the corner here, completely different strains.
Yeah.
You don't really have that option with other machinery.
So what is your approach when it comes to like your engineering department, like in terms of what you're looking for in your machines and what you're trying to get out of them, and like how do you also like kind of keep them reined in, just like, no, we want to stay this size, no bigger. So
the funny thing is I push our engineers a lot. I don't have an engineering background. What I have is I have an imagination.
Yeah.
So I always try to draw on paper what we can do. And I always walk back there and, I'll go back there and if we're drawing these things, I'm like, well, why can't you do that? Well, engineers have their kind of their mindset and how they work. I'm like, that's cool, but you can add this. Like, no, we can't. Have you tried it? No, I haven't tried it. Okay, well, why don't you try it? And so the way I approach our engineers and our technicians is I always say, hey, if you ever watched the movie Ford versus Ferrari, you can build the car. The engineers can build the car, but the engineers are also not the ones racing it.
Yeah.
So our approach when it comes down to this is, okay, this is what the customer wants. This is their end result. We're going to build this. This is their footprints of their facility. And if we build it and fit it in their facility, this is a go. We'll go back and retool as much as we need. We have multiple conversations with the client, even before anything is signed. We put on our consultant hat a lot. And so when it comes to the engineering space, we'll do whatever we can to make it work. If not, then we can either scale it down or send them to someone else who can. And we're more than happy to send references out and do these things. Yeah. But going back to your question about the engineering process is that I push the envelope because I don't have that engineering degree or that background. Yeah. I push it because I have an imagination. And for us to make a pre-roll machine that's 4x4x3, that took a lot of time. And when you're looking out in the market, everything is bigger, twice the size. You have something that's linear. You have something that's again rotary, but 3 times bigger.
Yeah.
I wanted to make something small, right? Because why not? I go into facilities when I was selling these grow lights. I'd go into grow rooms that are half the size of this studio here.
Just as warm.
Just as warm. So
Yeah.
So they're cranking those things out. For us, it's like there's, your imagination is going to take you where you need to go with that. Right?
Okay.
That's how we kind of see it.
I will add on that to give our engineering and technical team credit where credit is due. They're on site doing these installs. They're on site training people. And when they hear the feedback, because I think in the equipment world, we forget what it's like to actually weigh products and hand pack it ourselves. And so our technicians are our communication channel directly to the operator, not the owner of the company, but directly to the operators that are using it every single day. And a lot of the feedback, whether it's good news or bad news or just comments that they appreciate or want to change, we bring that in-house and our technicians directly relay that message to the leadership team. And they go, hey, listen, Joe over at, XYZ Grow, he's like, hey, what if he said it would be really cool if we did something like this. Yeah. And being a smaller company, we have the flexibility, because Alan is so involved in a lot of the design work behind the equipment that we don't have to jump through 20 different people to say, that is a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's give them a call and really detail in what they meant by this. And let's start incorporating this into the machine because we want, we supply the paintbrush. We're not the artist.
Yeah.
Right. And so let's get feedback from the people who are actually, as Alan said, in the car racing it.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I like about this industry is that, it's always valuable to get customer feedback and adjust accordingly. But the industry is so new that you could legitimately add features that could really be a differentiator in your equipment.
Yeah, and we do. And so, we play with this idea of we're mass custom. So we'll mass produce the things that are going to be standard throughout the machine, but we'll customize your components. So we have, different bag grippers for our robots. We do different things. We did different conveyors. We play with different kinds of robots, scale robots, delta robots.
Servo motors.
We do. It's
servo changeovers. And
it's hard to explain. It's easier to show. Yeah. If I had drawings here, I could show you what we're doing. Some of the crazy things that we're doing. Like right now, we're building a robot that could actually place pre-rolls into these tins here, and at the same time place them into tubes and tubing them. So you're having a robot do both at the same time.
Oh wow!
Because some of these companies, again, footprint wise, they only have so much space, and they can't. It's easier to build something that fits in there that will do both than to have 2 separate rooms doing.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like a lot that goes into the design is about accessibility and ease of use.
Absolutely.
What is it like from a maintenance perspective in terms of upkeep, cleaning the machines? Is that something that you guys do via customer service, or do you train someone in-house to take care of it?
So we do both. So we do have plans where we'll send technicians out every month just to do maintenance. Make sure everything's up and running, make sure, everything's oiled up, make sure there's no faults, parameter issues, nothing like that. But we also take a lot of time to train. So we wait for feedback just to make sure, hey, did this happen right? Did this go right? Did this go wrong? What's going on? What can we do to change? And a lot of things that we do in our engineering side too is that if we are upgrading things, we'll upgrade there too. So if you bought a bagger for me last year and I have a new software, that's fine. I could send it to you. But if I have a new upgrade for hardware, what I'll do is I'll have the technicians come out and upgrade those parts as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what we do there. And then, when it comes to the maintenance side, we have SOPs for everything. You have your user manuals, but you have your SOPs. And we provide checklists. So these are what you should do at the beginning of the day. This is what you should do at the end of the day. This is what you should do at the end of the week. When our technicians come out in that end of the month, or if it's quarterly, we want to make sure that we see all these reports to make sure that you did all these things. Because if there's something that's broken, we can always go back and say, well, this is why. So we'll fix this. But just let you know, this, if you follow these SOPs, you're not going to have issues with these machines because they're built to last for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I will also say one thing that I think is lacking in the space is a lot of transparency. You know, everyone's a little cagey about giving too much information out. One thing that we really like to do is, you know, prior to the install, or even during or after, have them speak to somebody who is another customer, because referrals are great, right? You know, you say, hey, can you give us a good word on our equipment and everything? They go, yeah, sure. You know, but it's really when they install the machine and they're running it and they want best practices from somebody who uses that machine 8, 12 hours a day, day in and day out. And we put people in touch with our customers who go, hey, you know what? Like, this works, but we've also found some really great ways to run the machine, you know, and this is the actual numbers we're getting, which are generally higher than what we're seeing. We prefer to stay conservative and let them, you know, run to the full red line.
Yeah.
But letting them speak to other customers, I think is really important, because they speak the same language. They're in the same trenches together, and we incorporate a lot of those into the SOPs. So these are also, just like our equipment is ever changing, you know, our SOPs are always getting more refined and more readable and more executable as our customers continue to push our equipment to the limits.
Well, is it hard? You know, you can have SOPs, but like when there's a lot of unskilled labor in the market, like, do you run into issues with the skill level of people using your machines? And then, you know, you talk about how you run into these teachable moments, and you just got to sit them down and be like,
Yeah.
well, look what you did here.
That's always going to be the case.
We do a lot of hand holding.
Yeah.
It's because you have to. In this industry, it's so new. There's a revolving door of labor. And the guy that's on the Apollo today might have came from a guy, you know, last week he was on the knockbox. He's learning this as we go.
Yeah.
So, and we take that into account. So we try to train as many people as we can. Our job is to when we leave, we have a list of qualified operators. And if we don't, we still go out there and we'll retrain.
Okay.
Right? And that's kind of what we do. And then also you have guys now coming in from the CPG space that actually know automation. Those guys, they're the ones teaching us.
Okay.
Right. We have guys that we work with that, you know, they're coming from, you know, Coors, Coca-Cola, Ferrero Rocher, big, massive companies that are just doing, you know, for us, hey, 30 per minute is pretty fast, 35 per minute. They're going 300 per minute.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those guys are also helping us. Hey, you should change this out. You should change that out. And we take that into account, right? We'll build those machines with those specs on it for them.
Okay.
Got to keep innovating.
Yeah. Oh, no. Innovate or die, or whatever the saying is.
Yeah, there's probably a million idiosms out there. But I think,
yeah. So you brought some visual aids here. What do we have in front of us? Are these just examples of all the different types of packing equipment or packaging that you can work with?
Yeah. So I brought a bunch of stuff here. So we have our pre-rolls into tins right here. This is a 5-pack. This is a machine that we're working on right now. We're building a robot to put the pre-rolls into here. They're offset, so it's one on every side. And at the same time, the robot's going to the other side and filling it on the tubes. Okay. So we have that. You have your standard bags right here. This is a Mylar pre-made pouch.
Okay.
So you're looking at this. This is probably doing quarters. So you have something this wide.
So we have our Eco Bagger, which is kind of our entry-level, fully automated system. Very small footprint again as well. I think you might have seen that at the show.
Yeah.
And then also we've mentioned the Roto Bagger a number of times. That's kind of the higher production speed. That's what that would be for anyone who's listening that's not in the packaging space.
One thing that I was curious about is I heard that with packaging, the fact that everything has to be like child-proof or child-resistant, it makes it really difficult for filling. Yeah. I mean, do you guys run into those challenges as well?
We do. In bags, it's been pretty easy now. Okay. I think the industry has kind of adopted that. If you're going to automate, you have to buy your bags pre-opened.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's other things. So, for example, these jars right here, this looks like a normal like Altoid tin, but if you look at it, it's a quarter of a turn and then it locks in place. Okay. So our capping machines have to be specific to this, where it knows you're not turning the whole thing. Because if you turn the whole thing, it's an unlock again.
Okay.
So we have that to play with, and it's challenging, right? So,
and to your point, we partner with a number of flexible film packaging companies. Not just a lowercase. Hey, we we refer them over, but like we work with Amcor with a exclusive partnership with them between our equipment and their packaging. We've worked with Dispo for years. We were actually on the Unshackled podcast discussing the Montana market at MJ Biz. Dispo's great. And oftentimes it's easier for us as an equipment manufacturer, again, to leverage their knowledge. And so when they send us the bags, we can do those tests directly with the packaging that they're supplying us with, because we are not the packaging experts. We rely on our partners more than I think they are given credit in a lot of the equipment space, because they're doing graphic design work, regulatory requirements on the bags, and also like simply getting your bags pre-opened before they arrive. I said that to somebody in Michigan. They go, wait, that's an option? I've got, and this girl's eyes just lit up. She goes, I spend at least 3 hours of my day just opening. Every Tuesday when the shipment comes in, I spend 3 hours just opening bags.
They have a technique where they go like this.
Just ask them and they will send. And if they don't, I've got a great group that will do that for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I hadn't heard of it. I just heard that it was a challenge. I mean, I guess.
Get them pre-opened.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier.
But
anyways, I digress.
No, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we have different things. Like, for example, we have this, which is a chocolate that goes into a pre-made bag right here.
Okay.
So we have the flow wrap chocolate bar here in our Pack 520. And then it goes into our Eco Bagger side loader, which what it'll do is you can't drop this vertically, so you got to drop this horizontally. It drops it right into the bags here. But as you can see right here, how tight this is. Yep. And just getting it in there is a challenge.
Okay.
So our Eco Bagger side loader can do that. We've done this,
and that was an industry born. We did not have a side loader until one of our customers said, "Hey, we love your bagger. What if you guys could do this?" And we said, and Alan's imagination, and with some elbow grease from our technicians, they said, "Oh yeah, we can absolutely do that." And sure enough, between our flow wrappers that are Italian made, and then going into our Eco Bagger side loader, it works like a charm.
Yeah, and here's another one that's actually industry born is these vape carts right here.
Okay.
They're in like this is a 2 3/4 bag. Most baggers can't open this. On our Rotobagger, we've designed a Rotobagger specifically for this. It's a Rotobagger 1000. So you can go as small as 2.25.
Yep.
And you could actually load your vape carts, your pre-rolls, your tubes, your batteries. We can go up to 50 per minute on this thing.
Again, that's fully servo driven, and again the custom entry, the feeder into that Rotobagger. So when we say that we listen to our customers, maybe even more than sometimes is smart for us, but we have yet to have it not work out for us.
Yeah, and this right here, this is the last one I would show. This is
wild.
This is going to be the next industry standard is die cut bags.
Okay.
And we've made our Eco Bagger compatible for this, Eco Bagger Mini. The grips, they can open up here, it'll drop the flour in here, and then it'll push the product down to settle before it seals.
Okay.
That's proprietary to us, and that's kind of what we've done to change.
Yep.
But just like looking at this bag here, it's completely different. We've done something, I can't say the company's name, but it was a mushroom bag.
Oh, okay.
And it was shaped awkwardly, and we're able to do that. So we can work with die cut bags.
Yeah.
I know a lot of machinery. It's tough because you need the grippers at a certain angle.
Yeah.
But we're able to go so small that you can grab these bags at a point, open them up, and fill.
Okay.
And to that point, that was at the New York Canicon.
Okay.
And our technician on the spot, on the show floor, a gentleman brought those bags up and said, "You know what? Can you guys get these to run?" And Raphael, if he listens to this, did such a great job. By the time the customer got back, he was running those die cut bags on the show floor within about an hour. So just to speak to our technicians, they're the guys behind the scenes that make this all possible.
Yeah, that's a pro move, Raphael. Are there any types of packaging or packaging manufacturers, or is there anything that you kind of stay away from just because it's not a real good quality product, and so you sort of recommend against using it?
I say don't cut corners.
Yeah.
It's really easy to be enticed, and this is where we see the problems it's part of education, right? It is working with high quality film suppliers and us learning from them, and then them teaching the customer. What I see is that if people cut corners on packaging, I mean, which you shouldn't, because that's what the customer sees at the end of the day. So immediately you should be trying to present your product in the best light. That's just a business decision.
Yeah.
But when you start to automate, there's things you must understand, like headspace, openings, because you're requiring gravity or a machine to handle that bag. And so the more you cut corners and try to get the cheapest possible product, it either won't withstand automation. And so the best advice I can give people, not that anyone needs it in this space from a talking head here, but is talk with multiple film suppliers. Find one that has the identity that matches your brand that you're looking for, and then ensure that obviously have a budget in mind, and buy quality, because by the time you automate, again, from the inception of your business, think about automation, think about the future, think about scaling, so that you're not having to backpedal later. So take your time, ask us. We've got a lot of great partners in the space. Don't cut corners. Otherwise, it'll just create a lot of headaches down the road.
Well, it was, I've heard similar things with cones, like cone manufacturers, and just the discrepancies in the type of paper and the weight of the paper, like, can cause like real issues when it comes to compliance and working in automated machines.
And smokability, for that matter. I mean,
true.
Right?
I mean, do you have a preferred cone supplier as well?
We do. We test a lot of our machines on 2 cones. Our favorite is actually Hara cones.
Okay.
Futurilla is a second.
Okay.
I think Futurilla is kind of, along with Raw, I think Raw cones are very, very good. But those 3 guys, I think, are the industry leaders when it comes to cones. But Hara has been our favorite in our pre-roll machine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they just, from running through a Apollo standpoint, they are always evenly open. Flour drops in there fine. There are filters. Their crutch is what you call them. The product doesn't go through them. We did last week. We did a keef pre-roll in the Hara cones, a full-on keef. It's a 1 gram keef pre-roll, and even though we're vibrating and tamping, the keef never came out the other side.
Yep.
Okay.
So and
they also have great customer service. Peyton and his team do exceptional work, and so that's something in this industry we pride ourselves on, and then we look for partners that when you call them, they answer the phone.
And they're so cool because they're like, hey, if you're
great.
having issues with your crutches, we'll make custom crutches for you.
They're
So
awesome.
that's the cool thing, and they have like customizable things. Like they're so much more willing to go beyond what the industry was asking for. I think right now they're working on something that's like I think it's the noodle tech is what everyone calls it.
Okay.
It's like a macaroni inside a pre-roll, so you can get that wind or that smokability.
What's the
it's a macaroni. Spiral.
The spiral.
Oh, like rotini?
It's like yes.
Is that rotini? Right?
Yeah, I think it's a rotini.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Who knew that we'd be like
discussing
welcome noodles?
the
noodle tech.
Welcome to the
This noodle
Pasta
tech.
podcast.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine, Lyra Hahn, who I grew up with in Orange County, that's what he was doing. He was taking noodles and he was rolling them in his blunts or his joints.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, if you guys can do this on a pre-roll and get it to work through your pre-roll machine, you guys are going to change everything.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? That's kind of cool. Why don't I talk to the guys at Hara? Because they're the only ones that would do it.
Yeah.
Turns out Lyra already knew the guys at Hara and they're already a step ahead of us. And then I saw that. And we're just waiting for the mass production of these so we can test them on our pre-roll machine.
Hopefully we didn't give any industry spoilers there.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah.
Sorry, Hara.
Well, we had mentioned we just got back from MJ Biz. Alan, what were your thoughts on the show, and kind of what's your take on the state of the cannabis industry in general?
I think the show is a really good show. I think this year, compared to last year, we had a lot more serious buyers this year. I think the industry is pretty mature now as a whole.
Yeah.
So the guys who are going to MJ BizCon now are not the same guys who are going last year and the year before. They already know who the players are. And if you're kind of already, I would say for anyone that's starting in the industry, MJ BizCon is your Super Bowl. It's your WrestleMania. It's your NBA Finals Game 7. Like, this is where you need to be.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the guys who go to this show now already know who the players are, and they won't shop around. If you're there, they're going to work with you. They take meetings there. They don't walk the expo. They don't do that stuff. And I think as a whole, the industry now has matured enough to where these guys are going from other states, moving into up-and-coming states, medical states, and they're bringing that knowledge with them. So as big as the show was, I think it brought about 40,000 people. We still felt like we had more meaningful conversations at the show and more serious conversations rather than, what does this machine do? What does that machine do? It's less of running people down. It's more of like, okay, well, these are my bags. Some guys would bring in their bags. Some guys would bring in their jars. Can you do this? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Bring in their cones. Can you run your cones on this? And, we never had that up until this year.
Yeah.
The year before that, it'd always be more of like, you have 25 seconds to pitch me on this machine and what it does.
Yeah.
Now it's not like that.
Okay. And your thoughts on, I guess, the state of the industry as a whole?
I think the industry is growing in the right direction. I know federal legalization is always the big thing. It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. When's that elephant going to get here?
I would probably say another 10 years.
Yeah.
The world's going through a big crisis right now.
Yeah.
Lots of things going on with the world. I think cannabis, because we're in it, it matters to us, but to the rest of the world, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I think right now there's a lot of things that we got to solve in this world before legalization of cannabis comes through.
What do we have to solve first?
What do we have to what?
We'll get to it right now. No, what are the things we got to solve first?
I don't know. What do you think?
How about we just in general be better people to each other?
You know what? Don't hurt other people.
Yeah.
Let's solve this. Let's solve hurting other people.
What's the golden rule? Treat others like you'd like to be treated. I feel like that's a standard thing.
It's weird how many people that got lost on. It's just like it was like the first thing your parents taught you, or should have
taught you.
I suppose.
Jonathan, did you go to the show?
I was there. Yes.
What were your thoughts on the show?
I've been to a number of them, to say the least. I remember when it was hemp farmers, primarily up to now, and I like to see how much more professional it's gotten over time. I do feel like this year, I feel like I would like to see the show get a little bit more cohesive. I did feel like they segmented it. I know they're trying to separate, some sections from other sections, but especially on my side, working on the partnerships and creating this trusted ecosystem of manufacturers, people who work in lighting or trimmers or genetics, we communicate with them as well.
Yeah.
We communicate with the complementary manufacturers before the process, and being in the automation packaging, we're generally the very end.
Yeah.
And so the more we can communicate with those people in the beginning, it only helps the customer as they get to a retail ready product. I really like it whether it's top floor, bottom floor, I don't know what they want to do, but I heard from multiple people on the show floor, as well as spending a lot of time outside of our booth talking with guys like Root Sciences, who I've known for a long time, ETS, Calyx, out down in Salt Lake City and working in the rigid packaging and flexible packaging. A number of these manufacturers that we work with as I would say complementary groups, they felt the same way. I felt like we could have had a little bit more cohesion to the show, to increase the energy at the show this year. Overall, Alan said it great. I mean, I think our guys did a great job, and our partners did a great job, and I think there was a lot of time to have those good conversations. But I did hear from a lot of people it would be nicer to have them a little bit closer together and feel like one show instead of two shows sharing the same space.
Yeah, no, I get that. You want everybody in the same space.
Yeah.
So what? Is it working the booth the entire show, or are you guys trying to do a little bit of recon as to what else is in the industry, or maybe asking around as to what people are going to be looking for? Like, how much of it is fact finding for you?
I think everything's fact finding. It comes down to we're in the booth. We're always trying to figure out what's going on next.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing today isn't going to be what they're doing tomorrow. And if we can stay ahead of the curve and try to figure out what the industry is doing, customer to customer, not one customer is the same,
and state to state,
we'll be okay, I think.
Okay. Yeah. What about how much is going into pre-rolls these days? Like, first it was infusing, and then keef coating, and then diamond on the top. And like,
when does it stop?
I was gonna say, like, have we gone too far as to what we're doing?
I don't think so.
Pandora's box?
I think Natal, the guys over at Sorting Robotics, they have a really cool Stardust machine.
Yeah.
I want to get our pre-roll machine next to it.
Okay.
They have a machine that will paint the pre-roll.
Yeah.
And then dust it with keef or diamonds.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's cool. I think someone needs to build that. And I'm glad he did, because he's got the background for it.
He's a NASA engineer.
Yeah, of course, right?
If anyone can get it,
it's him.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool machine, and I can't wait to see that, and I can't wait to see facilities with that, right?
Yep.
So I hope in the next year or two, when we go deliver these Apollos, that those machines are next to it.
Yeah. So you came from Hollywood into cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that about this industry is it really seems to get its hooks into you.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever see yourself, kind of going back to Hollywood or into another industry?
I think, I'm a sort of entrepreneur. I like starting new businesses.
Yeah.
I like doing that stuff. At the same time, I mentioned lighting. I like cannabis a lot. I love this industry. I like the people. I love Hollywood.
Yeah.
I would go back to Hollywood one day when it's under my terms. Hollywood's a nasty, nasty place. The cannabis industry is a very happy place.
Yeah.
I think when they're completely different. Hollywood will be in the cards in the future, but for now, it's all cannabis.
Are there any potential collaborations there where you could just have like a cannabis focused production company?
Yeah, we've been talking about it. There's actually a couple films that were brought to me with some big actors about the cannabis space.
Oh, okay.
The opportunities like that still come to me. So they'll say, "Hey, I have this script. This big actor's attached. So and so and so. It's a A24 film. Do you want to get on top of it?"
Oh, right on.
So I'll look at that kind of on a personal side of like, okay, maybe one day, either I'll invest into that or LeafyPack will invest into it. Mm-hmm. But we're always going to be open to that. And if I can get these two worlds to mesh well together, then that'd be a fun thing to do in the future.
We went through that whole like genre of like chef movies. Like we can just do the same thing with cultivators and how quirky those guys are.
We can, yeah.
I can already see the biopics and docuseries coming out.
Yeah.
How about yourself? In cannabis for good or?
Oh boy, I've had a long, strange, storied career of many different industries. I've been in the cannabis industry, 1 year's like dog years, I think, in this space. I've enjoyed it so much, and I think I have moved within the industry. And my favorite part about it is when I go to these shows and I see the people I've known for years, and all the manufacturers who've survived so many, terrible moments, both just global economic issues and also just industry issues. And so when I get to go to these shows and see guys that I've known forever still running their businesses in the equipment manufacturing space, that reminds me why I do this. And that's what I love most about MJ BizCon. I know I was a little down on it before, but as Alan knows, I'm running all over the show, talking to so many people that I like to do that. I like to see the people who are in the space and the people who survive in this space. We're all here for a reason. Yeah. We're all doing something right. That's why I think us collaborating and communicating with each other is more important now than ever. Mm-hmm. And seeing everyone at the show, and whether it's commiserating or cohabitating or just enjoying each other's company, that's why I'm going to stay in this space as long as they'll let me.
Yeah. No, it was, there was a little bit, it seemed like a lot of apprehension going into the show. And I really found it invigorating. Like, I was just like, oh, okay. Things aren't as bad as everybody's kind of been chirping about.
That's always the case.
When you talk about legalization in 10 years, it's been interesting just in like the 2+ year trajectory of doing this podcast, how it went from like people were like in the 3 to 5 range, and then it went back up to 7, and now it's at, and like you're the second person this week that said 10, and I'm just like, oh man, we're getting further
tomorrow
away.
someone can go live tomorrow, and that could be it's 8.
Yeah.
Well, and I think federal legalization, I think it sounds great on paper, but and again, this is maybe a different podcast to be discussed, but if it went federally legal tomorrow, there are so many states that would just be utterly and completely decimated overnight.
Oh yeah.
And so I think it's that monkey's paw where I think I would rather all of these states come online and start, we've used the word collaborate a lot on this podcast, but I think that's what the industry needs right now is let these states collaborate together to come up with rules that make sense in every state. And let's give these producers a chance to actually make a viable business and and have the government get out of the way first before we start, praising the sun for federal legalization. Yeah. Let's take care of each other's houses and then let it go federally legal.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It'd be incredibly disruptive. But I think you're right. I think there is like a hybrid, like a middle ground where it could be legal in every state, and maybe like, I don't know, like federally, not decriminalized, but just like stuff like banking goes through. Just make the lives like
Make it easier.
Just give us a break.
Give us spanking. Give us spanking. That's what everyone wants. Give us spanking.
Just treat these businesses like you would any other manufacturer.
Yeah, work on some tax reform. Like let's get those things ironed out. Because if the federal government came in right away, I think we would quickly want to wish that genie back into a bottle.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I really do appreciate you guys coming here. It's honestly great just having a conversation in person. But before we get out of here, I'll start with you, Jonathan. Like, is there anything you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or LeafyPack?
I think the thing that I would like to just put out there, and we've been really pushing it this year, and hopefully our actions speak louder than my words here on this podcast. But if you want to, help your customer and you want to put your best foot forward and you feel like we can be part of that, call me, call Alan. We want to work with as many people as possible. I've mentioned a couple names of groups that we've worked with and collaborated with, not just as referrals, but actual true partnerships. We want to build an ecosystem to shepherd this industry in a positive way and bring thought leaders along with us. I don't care what vertical you're in. We all are in the same industry and is a small industry. So do not hesitate to reach out. If there's a way for us to work together for the betterment of this industry and the people jumping in, we want to be part of it.
Yeah. Alan, anything we left out or you want to make sure the audience knows about?
No, I think that when it comes to packaging and automating, I think definitely give us a call. Mm-hmm. We're not going to say no. We're going to try to figure it out with you guys. And I think the industry is already full of no's.
Yeah.
They've already talked to many manufacturers that says no, they can't do it. Or if they say yes, they can, but they can't, that's who they are. But for us, give me your craziest ideas. I'll try to make it work.
Okay. I mean, you got to say no to some people, right?
I think we, and Al and I had this discussion earlier. If we get to that no, mm-hmm. we'll let you know because we don't want to ever say yes to everything. Yeah. But we will say yes until we absolutely know it's not possible. And then them as customers know that, hey, listen, we tried our damnedest. I don't know if I can swear on
this.
You can swear, yeah. We tried our damnedest and we gave it all the effort we possibly can. And it's something we can't do, but that way we know that no one else is going to do it either.
True. And I guess I don't mean a no in the sense of like trying something new, but like, there has to be some times where an operator comes out looking at your machine and you're just like, hey, I just don't think this is a good partnership.
It happens. It happens. Yeah. But you know what? We point them in the right direction.
Yeah.
And hey, something crazy is a no is that 3 years ago, if you had asked me if I could automate sauce and butter into carts or into jars, I said no.
A year and a half ago, if people said, can you use an air cush technology green vault system with your roto bagger? The answer would have been no.
Yeah.
And that would have been a hard no. Mm-hmm. But you fast forward, this industry moves so quickly. Now we say absolutely. And actually, it's not just a one-off. It's a complete line that you can have. And that's why we're looking for partnerships is to create more yeses that are realized and tangible than just yeses to get a sale and move a piece of equipment out the door.
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. Just in covering other industries, like if you just look at the food packaging industry, when you go to a trade show every year, it's like incremental changes, small changes, whereas there are dramatic changes happening every month. And
dog years.
Yeah. I mean, it's a truer words, man. Like they are dog years, and taxing mentally. Well, again, thank you both for coming out. You guys are always welcome here, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much. This was wonderful.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right. For Alan Vogt and Jonathan Ballard with LeafyPack, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.